I think it'd be weird. Uh, it depends on who that. But I was in general, guys calling me Gregory would be weird. Um, but for some reason, there's almost like a mom quality, like in the not in a weird way, but not in a weird way either. That
Yeah.
like if a female uses it, so I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes sense. So,
Yeah. So Angie doesn't call you Gregory.
uh, like it would be playful. Uh,
Yeah.
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 So, which is the same for others. So I'm trying
Yeah.
to, and it's usually if I'm being ornery in some way, like picking on somebody.
Yeah.
Um, like if I have
Awesome.
garbage, I'll just hand it to somebody. Gregory.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Odd Testament podcast. My name is Ryan.
My name is Eric.
Hey, I'm Greg.
Boys, good to have you back. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Greg, you sound a lot better this week. Are you over your cold?
The cold part, yeah. Got
Okay.
still we have extremely fertile trees apparently around here, and so allergies are really nuts. So
Okay.
Yeah, we
eye
got a big,
water and snot and all that stuff.
I was gonna say we have a big cottonwood tree in our backyard, and it just started to fall, and I am like, it's crazy. So outside of that, I mean, what's nice is it like we're gonna get some rain this weekend. It's also really hot in Omaha. Is steaming, so I'm ready for it to cool down. We skipped over spring.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I heard. I heard it's straight summer there right now,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
kind of sounds nice because right now, literally, it's rainy and like 55 degrees outside here or something like that. So, like,
Yeah, it's going to be
what?
87 today.
Wow, I'm jealous. I really am. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'll
So,
take 55.
yes. Well, guys, we are here today. Greg, you are leading the discussion, but first,
Yeah.
you guys
Yep.
know what it's time for.
Is
Getting
it
to know
getting to
you.
know you? Getting to know you. Getting to know you. Getting to know you. Getting to know you.
Yes, getting to know you. So, I have another internet trend question that might give it away.
Real quick,
Alright.
real quick.
Yeah.
I was just like scratching my eye a little bit and also noticing some of the shorts that we do and however they're getting picked, but it's the one thing that the picture that's showing up on the shorts is often, I feel like it's me like mouth open doing something weird in that second, and it's not what immediately comes, but that's the still that shows up on the short. So I'm sure that somehow it's going to be like this on here, and for whatever short just happens. So
So just so you
yeah,
know,
go ahead.
I think each like app that I post on, it just randomly chooses a still, and
Nice.
I never mess with it, with the
That's
still
funny.
part. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, you have social media to blame for that. They are just out to get you. So, um, getting to know you question, guys. Again, another internet trend question. I do think this helps us to like know how each one of us thinks. And so,
That's right.
the internet trend question that's going around this week that I'm really interested to hear you guys' response. 100 Americans versus 100 Brits in a fight. Who's coming out? Who's winning? This might alienate some of our listeners, so I'm aware of that, but I have some pretty strong feelings on this. But I'll let you
Yeah.
guys go first.
Well,
What do you
remember,
guys think?
we have a pretty large Indian audience, so I think just right off the bat, Americans, because Brits, anyways.
History for the of the British Empire.
100
Oppression.
Americans, 100 Brits. Well, did you guys I'm spacing on the name. But I remember Andy Kaup was obsessed with this movie where it was about football teams in
Green,
England.
Green Street Hooligan.
Hooligans, yeah, Green Street Hooligans. And it was like, yeah, these soccer clubs that, you know, you'd go see the game, and then after the game, these soccer clubs had like a whole hooligan
They called
group,
them
you know.
firms.
Yeah,
Mhm.
firms. That's right, man. You remember this movie. And
Well,
they
I
were,
watch the movie regularly, so
yeah. So I would say if you take those guys and then every character in a Guy Ritchie movie, uh like I'm worried about Americans. But yeah, so are we doing the like similar to last week, like an average, you know, 100 people and an average 100 people, or are we getting to choose which ones? Because I think if we get to choose, Americans are destroying. I mean, professional athletes,
I
like,
say give some logic for both.
okay. Well, so I would say, yeah, if we get to absolutely choose, then I mean, our professional athlete pool is massive. I mean, what are you gonna do? Like, you could try, but there's nothing you could do about that. Like, Americans are gonna dominate just by the fact that we have such a large pool of people to pull from, and again, all of those just being the best of the best athletes in the entire world. So that's not a go America, but it is the go America, you know.
Mhm.
I think if you take the like an average group, I don't remember the statistics off my head, but I would say from recent understanding, Americans are much more overweight than the average Brit. And so again, 100 versus 100 is somewhat of an endurance game. So I think I'm gonna go the Brits, the Brits, just because of the endurance game where they're gonna be healthier, and they got some tenacity. I still think they got that Winston Churchill blood still in them. So that I would go that. I'm going against my country on this one.
Yeah, I think it's all about how the 100 are picked. Um,
Mhm.
So, oh, I thought we froze for a second there, but yeah, I think it's about how they're picked. By the way, I'm also watching some of these or listening to some of these and going, man, I talk really slow, so I'm going to try and speed up how I'm thinking out loud. So anyway, how they're picked, if it's random, I think the cultures are um, I think there's details and what foods we like and what we like to read and our dial or different ways of speaking and stuff are but I think they're all surface. I think those exist, but they're all surface. I think fundamentally we're really, really similar. Um, and I think it would be hard to find a culture that random 100 versus random 100 and then run that scenario 100 times. I
Mm.
think it's going to come out to 50% to even.
Yeah.
Because if you're like, no, our tough guys, you don't have tough guys in Britain, and you go, oh, have you seen Green Street Hooligans?
Mhm.
You're thinking that everything is like the nice London things you've seen, and you're forgetting that London and Paris and all these large cities have slums, or
Yeah.
places where gangs are, and just because they might be different color people than what you associate with gangs here doesn't mean that these aren't some really rough people. So and so if we're picking, well, we're going to take our tough guys against your tough guys. Well, what do you mean by tough guys? If you go gangs, okay, I think still 50. I think it's going to come out even over 100 different tries. So a specific one, I think it's a coin flip. And so if you go 100 top military,
Mhm.
SAS or whatever else in Britain and SEAL Team 6 and Delta or something like that. Um, I still go, I think it's a coin flip. Um, our special forces are designed off of theirs. So
Mm.
they've got a longer history, but there's a good argument to make that the top guys are American. But that doesn't take away the quality of the Brits. So I think it's a coin flip regardless of the setup, unless you weight one of them somehow.
Mm. Living in that middle ground, life isn't so black and white to Greg Wallace. It's
It's
actually
not.
gray.
It's utterly gray. It's unfortunately while searching for something to stand on. Yeah.
Ryan, come on. I know because you thought about this. I bet you have an answer, and it's the right one. It's the one that we should all follow, right?
Screw both of you guys, America. That's what I say. No, okay, no.
MURIKA.
All right, so the when I first heard this question, it was actually from a British person, and he was going off, about winning a banana, whatever, and we get to choose. He's going off. We get to choose people from these 5 British cities, and Nottingham, and Liverpool, and all the and you can choose 100 people from Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Texas, and Florida, or whatever. And I'm like, we
So
don't need all those places. Just give me Texas. Just give me Texas. And those ranchers out there, will rip those guys apart. I heard another one that was like another British person. Have you ever heard of the Brummies and Scousers? Apparently those are British. Those are British gangs.
Okay.
Brummies
Yeah.
and Scousers. How intimidating is that? Not very. And so, and so I'm like, okay, if we can choose our 100 people and they get to choose, Eric's losing it. We can choose our 100 people and they get to choose their 100. I think we win. Even though if it's random, like a draft, right? Like they're just randomly drafted, then it's going to be more even. But I still think the American mindset is just way different. Have you ever heard of British people experiencing American weather? They lose their minds. A heat wave over there last year was 75 degrees Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm. They're weak. Is that what you're saying?
A heat wave.
Yeah.
That's what our house is set to sometimes, 75 degrees. So if they're complaining about that, are they really tough enough to handle, So I don't know. That's just me being pro America, boys.
Yeah, I like the idea that in my head, when you're explaining that, you're thinking like Texans, cattle wranglers, and all that stuff versus a bunch of chimney sweeps.
Yeah.
And you're like, why is that even a question? Like, these guys go up and down one thing. Okay.
Of course we could beat Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins. Yeah.
One guy I heard talk about this was like, in Florida, we have people who are eating people's faces. How are we afraid of anybody coming out of Britain or whatever?
Here's the thing though. You said the American mindset. I think if you did maybe like 10 years ago, the American mindset might be a little bit stronger than it is right now. Like here's what would happen. It would be like 100 people and everyone would go, okay, who did you vote for? Okay, you guys, I don't know why they gave us you, but you need to go this way because you're going to kill us. Okay.
Yeah.
Where's the QAnon shaman? Like that guy.
Yeah, like if it's a vegan named Chad, I'm not really confident in that guy.
Just the bone structure alone.
What's he gonna do? Slap you with a sandal? So
yeah, and I think
that's a John Chris bit, by the way.
Some props to Brits that we're not adding in is their long-term mindset. They existed way longer than we have, and just World War II, these guys held out. These guys were the wall against Nazism, against Hitler coming, and just through absolute willpower, getting to the brink of almost having to decide, we're gonna finally give in, but they didn't. And that amount of willpower as a culture is ingrained in them. There's that just British. They have a term for it, but just that British,
Mhm.
the dry wit comes out of this. The British humor comes out of this,
Mhm.
in that we just endure. It's not quite Russian, where it's everything sucks and so we get up today. But it's not as intellectually, I don't want to use the word weird, but different as it may be French kind of point of view. It's got this practicality to it. It just endures. And so
I think you have to
Americans
develop
have this
that.
independence,
Right.
that is, what are the strengths of these groups,
Yeah.
over easily stated, but yeah, incredible, just good stuff.
I think you only have to develop that if you're in that situation, and
Mhm.
America hasn't, because we're winners. Let's go. We would have if we had to.
Wow.
We
Wow.
didn't need it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
will echo. I will echo a response I heard somebody say. This question was already answered over 200 years ago during the American Revolution, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's home turf advantage. That's the you got to go with that. So
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So all in
Well,
good fun, guys.
Absolutely.
America would win. So
unanimous agreement. Yeah.
and
so
I go 50-50.
yeah, yeah. Look, that's a moderate right there, Greg. You're a moderate at heart, riding the
Yeah.
fence.
That's right.
Yeah, so that I can be correct.
I just want to remind people, I said the Brits because we're fat. So if anyone's mad at me for the last 10 minutes, I'm on your side, Brits, and I'll take gifts. My Venmo is at
Yeah.
Eric_Wallace. And
Okay, really quick. So this isn't part of it, but just reminded me. There's been kind of this food war going back and forth between Americans and Brits on TikTok too, and Brits.
Oh,
like,
that's not a competition.
yeah, like one of the things like Brits are touting. Apparently, there's this restaurant that does these humongous baked potatoes, and they're like loaded, but it's like loaded with baked beans and tuna, like. And they're like, it's so good. It's so good. Like, that sounds like a struggle meal, right? Like that's a struggle meal, but like you're touting like this is one of the best
we give
baked
that
beans and tuna on a baked potato. Like,
we give
yeah,
that meal to our pigs before we slaughter them and eat their ribs.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's a reason we're fat. There's a reason we're fat.
That's
It's
right.
because our
That's
food
right.
is banging.
God's country.
There's a reason why. I mean, let's give props to fish and chips. You can't.
Sure.
For
there's-
sure.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
And what else?
Really stale, unflavorful cookies that they call biscuits.
Yeah, I'm searching. There's got to be something, right? I mean,
Haggis.
right, but that's not good. And plus it's Scottish.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
The
So
beans on toast is like one of their staples, like baked beans on toast. Apparently it's really good, but like that's like their claim to fame food wise. Like, okay.
yeah. Yeah. So the argument against us would be that all of our stuff's stolen. And
made better. I prefer. We're
improved.
we're the Apple of the world, where like Apple has not made anything innovative. They just made it better.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm going to push back against the Apple thing too. Windows stole Apple stuff. So yeah. Oh no, they just sued him too early.
You're just on Bill Gates'
Apple
side now.
Apple sued him too early.
You just took Greg off the leash.
Man alive. Yeah. Just needed to
How
wait.
far I can twist it. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, okay, we don't have time.
Boys, thank you for humoring me. That was a fun discussion. Any Brits that are listening, we love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Go Merca. Eric doesn't.
You'll be back.
Greg, you have the discussion today.
Sorry,
and we are going to ask you 7 questions to figure out. Yeah, we don't. As I was
Is
saying it,
this
I was like, we already know it. We already know
Yeah.
it. So we're
yeah,
not gonna
is
do
this
this.
Sodom
So,
and Gomorrah? Is this
Yes.
part
How did you
2?
get it? That's
Yeah.
yes.
nuts.
So, Greg,
Yeah.
take it away, man.
Oh, I'm leading.
Yeah.
I thought you were. All right. This is going to be fun and maybe no. I don't know. This is so I had been I started a podcast in 2019. So before the world ended. And we got our new demarcation line that we can go. So before COVID, you remember
Mhm,
COVID? Everybody references it all the time. So before that, before my soul was revealed as being as getting damaged, and before I knew that
the
people thought
before
about
times.
the before times. There we go.
Yeah.
I get lost. I think I'm grieving. Probably not even a joke, but might be a funny way of thinking about it. So 12 episodes into my previous podcast called Bibleosophy. The episodes are still out there. I'm just not making new ones. And was going fine and going step by step through the Bible was where I was at. And so I'm in Genesis. Did Genesis 18, felt really good, and was hit Genesis 19. Knew it was coming, and had been thinking about it for a while, and hit a wall. Could not figure out how to do a podcast about this thing. And give it 6 years, and now maybe I can think of ways around it, but I couldn't come up with what I thought the story was about. And man, it really, really frustrated me. Well, to the point that I stopped doing a podcast because I didn't know how to go forward. And that says a lot about me, and my tendency towards rigidity. But anyway, I think well, you know what? I'm going to read the story, and then I have a couple comments that just to kind of frame it. But this is not a cool story that we're getting ready to encounter, and so we're going to have to choose as commenters on this to keep our moods up, because this one's a little hard. But as I'll say in a minute, also I think it's the point. So among the point. So Genesis 19, we're starting out at verse 1. It'll be a little bit. We're going to go through verse 13 and then start again on 23. But anyway, that evening. So real quick recap of last time. We talked about angels showing up, and Yahweh showing up, talking to Abraham. Keep doing that. Talking to Abraham hosting them, doing hospitality really well, correctly. So we talked a lot about that. We talked about the conversation between Abraham and Yahweh speaking with Abram. Should we keep this from Abraham? But instead they pass on the information, and Abraham seems to argue God down to what if, because he's like, well, what if there's 50 righteous people you're going to destroy? Surely the judge of all the earth wouldn't do something unrighteous like that, wouldn't destroy the righteous. And so Abraham negotiates them down to 10. And this is and so the two angels have left, or there were three. There was Yahweh and then two angels, and the two men or angels go forward down into the valley where Sodom and Gomorrah are. And if you have a map in your head, or you're thinking about it, you're down in the mid-southern part of Israel, the southern part of the Dead Sea, and go around to the end. Usually there's arguments about literally everything, but this is where most people think Sodom and Gomorrah were. So on the southern end of the Dead Sea, off into that valley. And so anyway,
Yeah.
that's where
is Sodom, do we know background before this about Sodom and Gomorrah? I mean, we know a little bit, but what are they, like you said, into the Dead Sea? Are they a trading port? Are they a turnaround part? Like, are they like, do you know any like further background of the city?
Yeah, based on previous stories with Abram and Lot, Abraham comes south from Haran, and is moving there at some point, and Lot is with him, his nephew, and at some point their families and their herds become too big to be able to be sustained within a smaller area, and so they split ways. And Abraham gives Lot the choice. Hey, stay in this area or you can go wherever you want. And Lot looks down across the Dead Sea into this valley that Sodom and Gomorrah are, and sees, at least at that point, it's green, fertile. It's the idea is somewhat Eden-like, not restoration of God like, but garden-ish, very fertile, able to. And so Lot's like, yeah, give me the good place. Give me the pretty place and the place that life will be a little easier. That's my version. Life will be easier, but give me the place that it's clear. It seems like the best bet. And so we've got a very fertile area. Then we see raiders come, and later, in a few chapters later, raiders come and attack these areas and actually raid Sodom and take off with Lot's family. And so Abram gets his guys together, goes up and wipes them out, or attacks the people that attack them, saves Lot and his family and brings it back. And this is an encounter between the king and mayor is to a king, we think, over a bunch of cities and things like that. That when we're using king in the Bible at this point, we're not that. You were a king of a smaller area, maybe even a king of a city. And so the king of Sodom. So mayor, but maybe with some more power. I think of a unifying force, somebody who could call people together. And so the mayor comes out, or the king comes out and says, hey, thanks for this, keep some of the stuff that you saved for us. And Abraham says, oh no, I'm not taking anything from you. This is the Greg version. But he says, I don't want it ever thought that a man made Abraham wealthy. And his whole thing is, and that's also when he meets Melchizedek, who that name means king of righteousness. And Melchizedek's coming out of Salem, which is similar to Shalom. He's the king of righteousness coming out of peace. And so Abraham has an encounter with him, and Abraham actually gives him 10%. And so this is all the setup as far as related to Sodom and those areas. So any other thoughts? Or
no, it's just, I think it's good to kind of understand where we're coming from, that this was not a deliberately like preset evil place. Like, I think there's sometimes a confusion of like God's ordinance of like evil in the world, at least of his hands off allowance of things, that can kind of get confusing. And so this isn't like a Noah story where he is trying to clean up, the entire world, but there is something that needs to get done in what's about to happen.
Yeah, and for New Testament, 2 Peter and Jude, there actually is a connection. They see a connection to to the Noah story, to the destruction of angels, of the all that weird stuff. I want to say Genesis 6, and somewhere in there, however, pre-Noah, maybe a little later in 6, but it doesn't matter. But we'll talk about it. Decreation and things like that. So as possibilities. So all right, we good? We set?
Yeah.
Good deal. Ryan, are you alive?
Yeah. I'm just listening. I'm absorbing.
Good. So. Okay, good. Checking your email and things. Got it. I'm totally playing. All right. Genesis 19, starting verse 1. That evening, and this is NLT, New Living Translation. I like that right now. That evening, the two angels came to the entrance of the city of Sodom. Lot was sitting there. Pause. If he's sitting there, he's probably one of the leaders of the town. This is where they would try cases and stuff, was at the city. So, and when he saw them, the two angels, he stood up to meet them. Then he welcomed them and bowed with his face to the ground. My lords, he said, come to my home, wash your feet, and be guests for the night. You may then get up early in the morning and be on your way again. Okay, so we talked about hospitality last time. Quick comments on what we talked about with hospitality and what Lot's doing here.
Sounds very similar to what Abraham did the chapter before. Same deal. He stood up, he greeted them, he bowed with his face to the ground. He invited them to come to his house. I mean, just same thing. So it sounds like it's a common practice to do this.
Mhm.
Yeah. How about get up early in the morning and be on your way again? Also, I agree.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, to me that there's not a ton of comment, but
Mhm.
to me that's this isn't the safe place for anyone to be. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but yes, it seems like Lot's been raised right,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So anyway, oh no, they replied, kicking back in here. We'll just spend the night out here in the city square. Yeah, that isn't. Yeah. So anyway, but Lot insisted. So again, hospitality, and this is a big deal because we're going to hit something that happens that Lot actually does. That you're going to go,
Mhm.
that's crazy. So I'm pushing on this hospitality thing because he's doing it as right as he can.
Mhm.
But Lot insisted. So at last they went home with him. Lot prepared a feast for them. Again, hospitality, complete with fresh bread without yeast, and they ate. But before they retired for the night, all the men of Sodom, young and old, came from all over the city and surrounded the house.
Mhm.
They shouted to Lot, "Where are the men who came to spend the night with you? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." So Lot stepped out to talk to them, shutting the door behind him. "Please, my brothers," he begged, "don't do such a wicked thing. Look, I have two virgin daughters." Here's the crazy part that I'm pushing, want to give to. "I have two virgin daughters. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do with them as you wish. But please leave these men alone, for they are my guests and under my protection." So there we go. Verse 9, "Stand back," they shouted. This fellow came to town as an outsider, and now he's acting like our judge. We'll treat you far worse than those other men." And they lunged toward Lot to break down the door. But the two angels reached out, pulled Lot into the house, and bolted the door. Then they blinded all the men, young and old, who were at the door of the house, so they gave up trying to get inside. Meanwhile, the angels questioned Lot, "Do you have any other relatives here in the city?" They asked, "Get them out of this place, your sons-in-law, sons, daughters, and or anyone else, for we are about to destroy this city completely. The outcry against this place is so great, it has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to destroy it." So the next 10 verses are Lot getting his people together and trying to get out of the city.
Mhm.
So start again on verse 23. Lot reached the village, and also where they were going to go. They went to this tiny city that's name actually means small, things like that. So that's what there was going on there. Lot reached the village just as the sun was rising over the horizon, so daybreak. Then the Lord rained down fire and burning sulfur from the sky on Sodom and Gomorrah. He utterly destroyed them along with the other cities and villages of the plain, wiping out all the people and every bit of the vegetation. But Lot's wife looked back as she was following behind him, and she turned into a pillar of salt. Abraham got up early that morning and hurried out to the place where he had stood in the Lord's presence. He looked out across the plain toward Sodom and Gomorrah and watched as columns of smoke rose from the cities
Mhm.
like smoke from a furnace. But God had listened to Abraham's request and kept Lot safe, removing him from the disaster that engulfed the cities on the plain.
Mhm. Yes.
So,
Wow.
so
Weighty.
yeah. Quick, take a couple quick notes that we won't cover. Lot, I think to a good degree gets some bad press, and
Mhm.
I don't think it's fully undeserved. But that said, when it says that Abraham listened to Abraham's request, there is something that is right about Lot. Um, Now, either Peter or Jude, I can't remember. I think it's Jude. And anyway, Lot is touted as, he was a righteous person who was just being tortured by the sin that was around him and stuff.
Sure.
But it's in the Bible, so I'm gonna go, okay. That doesn't mean that I'm in my read, which I'm not. I don't know. I want to be careful. I
Mhm.
don't want to say that that it, I think it's commentary on this, and I think for me, Lot falls somewhere in between. That he's he's not a terrible person, um, but which is possibly, if we're going to use it as a metaphor,
Mhm.
possibly many of us trying to do our best, but we've chosen where we're at. And it's a little tough to be righteous.
Yeah.
When you have chosen, when a person has chosen to live deeply inside
Mhm.
unrighteousness. And so
I
it's
think something.
I'm going
I
to be a
think.
preacher on OnlyFans. Is,
Yeah. Yeah.
so anyway,
I think there's something in profiling Lot a little bit from the actions that we see from him, and then, like you said, him staying in Sodom, despite all the craziness, and
Mhm.
enough to
Yeah,
understand, hey, try to turn people away as quick as possible. He's a survivor. I would call that.
Mm.
Like he, when he gets to pick land, he goes to the best thing.
Mhm.
That's the highest chance of survival.
Yeah.
And then let's look at, he has built a business, he's built a livelihood in the city. To just up and leave will be devastating. And like, although he can go to Abraham, his job, his commission was to set something different. So it's not
Yeah.
like he would stay there that long. He'd have to go start, and it'd be ground zero again. And unfortunately, it is the wrong action, but his solution to the problem of the men of Sodom surrounding his home and asking for the visitors, for the angels, is to survive,
Mhm.
even if that is the cost of something
Yeah.
far greater than his own life, or should be far greater than his own life. And so there's this repeated effort of survival
Yeah.
in Lot, of just do what it takes to get to the next day,
Yeah.
which we see there's a selfishness in that,
Oh yeah.
that God does not honor at all.
And there's a price to it. We maybe in a future episode, but
Mhm.
another quick note is Lot leaves, ends up basically in a cave, and his daughters decide they need to
Mhm.
bring on their family, and so they actually sleep
Right.
with their dad. And out of those two things that happen are Moab and Ammon, and so the Moabites exist because of the
Mhm.
results of this existence that is going on, and the Ammonites, and these are two problems for the future nation of Israel, even as they're going into the promised land and after. It's a major issue that is created through, you go one act, but the
Yeah.
decisions leading up to this, what creates a person who thinks this is okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
And then you also, I mean, this is a reoccurring thing through the Old Testament.
yeah,
Canaanites, Edomites, like we see
yeah,
offspring that generations not ordained by God's promise and blessing, still existing, and these are the stories we're supposed to learn things from. And then, but it's the long-term legacy effect, of generational effect of what happens. This is, I think there's a thing about, like, the sins of our fathers, and people attach this to like generational curses.
mm,
Maybe a different podcast on something like
yeah,
that, but
good,
the sins of our fathers, we do pass
yeah,
along unless
yeah,
we break these ties. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
nice,
Yeah, I think there are, you see good qualities and bad qualities from Lot, like you guys have mentioned. And according to the Ancient Hebrew Research Center, there's a document that talks about hospitality, and I was reading over. I actually have it pulled up right here. I'm going to read from it. Part of hospitality, like part of the, like, understanding the social agreement of hospitality in the Near East, is protecting a guest. And so in the
mm,
lands of the ancient East, when a host accepts a man to be his guest, he thereby agrees at whatever cost to defend his guest from all possible enemies during the time of his entertainment. So I see that. I see Lot trying to do that. But also, Greg, you made a comment toward the beginning, like we see Lot at the entrance of the city, which implies some kind of like leadership role, that kind of thing. And so, like, if if he's a leader in this area, he's kind of responsible for how things are going, and so,
Mhm.
like, there's this tension there that
Yeah.
personally he's doing some good things, but it seems like his leadership he's not doing well in his leadership of this city of teaching the people he's leading to do good things. So,
and it's possible. I'll give a possible. I could see it as possible as him being there is leading in a positive way, in that he sees people coming and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to take care of you, but you need to get, this isn't the place to visit.
Yeah.
Our museum's below. Don't come. Our aquarium is a goldfish and it's dead. So don't come here." And obviously joking there. So the thoughts I had back when I was even trying to figure out a podcast on this was here's what I wrote. This story and everything surrounded it are such a mess that they've screwed me up and still do.
Yeah.
And I'm still really unhappy with that. I can't come to this is what I think about this story, about what its point is. I think I think part of the conversation is hard because we're not focused, because it's so much. It's like you're in your 100 versus 100 fight, but in the moment, like it's been going for 2 minutes and folks have died and it's craziness. You're in the middle of combat is what this, and I think it's part of the usefulness of this story is that we're not supposed to be happy. It's supposed to make us feel sick and really uncomfortable. We're supposed to be uncomfortable that of what these people do. We're supposed to be uncomfortable with what Lot does with the offers up his daughters. We're supposed to be nervous for the angels coming in, but we don't have enough information about Sodom because as far readers, as you know, what 30 over 3,000 years separation. We don't have the intimate knowledge of how bad Sodom is and Gomorrah are, or this whole valley is. But if we did, this reference is so common that it's used as regularly as a metaphor of the worst and with that. But I think we're supposed to be very uncomfortable. And I think we're supposed to answer questions we can't quite answer, or ask questions we can't quite answer. And left still without concrete to stand on other than, and we have to choose, is good. The question that we don't need to ask unless something so severe has happened, unless the whole world has been wiped out by a flood. Wait a minute. I thought God was good. And we have to rearrange things. We end up feeling like we have to justify things for God. And part of this, there's this quote from N.T. Wright that I'm going to pull out of his. N.T. was writing about Jude. He calls it Judah. A very one chapter, few paragraphs in the New Testament, and he's the reference there is having to do with false prophets. But this is what it's just a great way of thinking, or a helpful way. He says part of our dilemma in reading Jude 5 through 16, there's only one chapter, is that we have real difficulty believing that things could have been or could be again quite as bad as he's making out. We hear passages like this in the way that people heard tales of Nazi behavior, which I'll pause there. And in earlier, he talks about how the Americans and the rest of the world who wasn't in Germany seeing the atrocities would hear stories about it and go, that's just propaganda. That they're just trying, that can't be that bad. Pre-war, the king of Britain actually England actually went and met Hitler and was like, oh, he's a good guy, we can hang out, maybe he was trying to protect what, maybe he wanted to save his seat for after, once they were conquered or they agreed, but no one believed until the end of the war when the Americans came and actually liberated the camps. There was a widespread disbelief about the existence of Nazi camps and for the Jews and against the Jews, and just there's no way that's even possible. And so anyway, to continue, like this in the way people heard of Nazi behavior. And we think, well, perhaps there's a problem of sorts, but do you really need to go on about it at such length? Aren't you getting a bit obsessive? Aren't you just demonizing people you happen to not like that much? Can it really be as bad as all that? And I think as a whole, we genuinely have a struggle thinking that it could be as bad as all that. And would rather conspiracy it and say, oh, people are just, making up stories and stuff like that. I think this is one of the challenges in reading this, that we go, I think God was wrong here because you shouldn't ever destroy things. Really? This is extreme, and definitely, if whatever you feel about trigger warnings, but just be aware, I'm going to say something extreme. But how do you feel about hearing that there's some guy who's raping a 3-year-old? What should happen to them?
Yeah, justice is the word that comes to mind.
But what is justice? Should that person continue to exist?
Right.
Who's doing things like that?
Yeah.
There should be at least a sickness that rises up within you. Go, how's that even possible? And yet on our planet, there are entire structures that create opportunities for what I'll call men, but barely, because I have no respect for whatever, that's the whole structure to be able to do that. But it's separate from me. So I don't think about it. And even when I do think about it, I get desperate. I'm like, I don't know what to do with that level of it. It's one of my arguments for people who are like, I think the concept of evil is just a fabrication. Really? And I start giving them a little example. What do you do with that?
Yeah.
You think it's okay? Well, everybody kind of defines good and evil on their own. Really? This seems universal.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think there's when we talk about sin, like there's definitely a movement of, there's not this hierarchy of sin is sin no matter what it is, but there seems to be a hierarchy that God deems, which is there are actions you do to yourself, and then there are actions you do to others, and there's a righteousness that God displays when, especially Old Testament, when something evil is happening to others. He doesn't stand on the sidelines for this, and they're through many different means, good will come. Like meaning good will overcome evil, even if it is the long-term journey that God has promised, which is there will be a day in which evil is no longer a thing that we need to come up against. It will just be his goodness. So that's this long-term game plan. But his in-between game plan is, I have established now a church to fight the forces of evil, and I think the example that we're given here, and something that I know that I've tried to take out of reading the story, I think very similar. If you brush past the story, which is you want to. Just especially if you want to be a good Christian and you don't want to believe in this very difficult act to even people that you would massively disagree with. This is you have to sit in it. You have to allow this to focus, because we're really, I think, in the church, whatever even denomination or viewpoint of it, we're really good at looking at the easy, low-hanging fruit. We're really good at looking at the everyday things that are just these internal struggles, but there is great evil out there. Some of the work, why we need to fund missionaries, why we need to believe in the fight of human trafficking and abuse and all of these horrible things, and we need to put more money towards that than we do anything else in the church, because there is a great evil that we are not exposed to on a daily basis. But when exposed to it, you feel it, you know it. And so you have to almost voluntarily expose yourself to the hardships of the world. You have to be well read. You have to look at this stuff. Otherwise, I like you said, you will be easily deceived, which will be a whole other problem in and of itself.
That's good. That's good. I want to add too. I think we need to understand. I want to clarify something. A thought you said, Eric, that I think is true, but there needs to be clarification for people listening. You said fight evil, and when I heard that, immediately, no matter where you are, where you stand on this issue, I thought of the January 6th, 2021 insurrection. Right, those people who were there, they thought they were fighting evil. But fighting evil in the kingdom of God does not look like physically fighting. I think of Paul's words in Romans chapter 12. He says, don't be overcome by evil, but how do you overcome evil? With good. How do we overcome those that the 3-year-old, who's being sexually assaulted, or how do we overcome people being murdered? And like we try to overcome that, not by fighting the killers, not by fighting the offenders. We overcome that by trying to do good, by trying to replace that evil with good. And so, like, fighting physical violence against people who are being physically violent is not the answer, right? Like, I think it's just really important that we get that out there. That's my own, kind of take on it. I guess there might be people who listen who disagree, but I would say, like, read the words of Jesus and look at how he lived his life and see, like, that's how he lived his life. You don't overcome evil with violence. You don't, you overcome evil with good. I also think too, like, this is this story triggers Genesis 6 for me again. We talked about in that episode, we talked about how God, like, the claim Genesis 6 was making is, what does our God care about? He cares about the wickedness of the human heart. Like, that's what upset him to the point where he flooded the earth. Just the extent of human wickedness. And I'm seeing that again. I'm like, oh gosh, so as Greg was reading this, just Genesis 6 was just firing in my brain, the flood story and God hating wickedness. And so that's,
So I want to propose this question, is the fact, so we still have examples of great evil, is the fact that God hasn't done a similar thing like this evidence that God has changed, or is it we're in a post new covenant where we have a grace or an understanding of how to defend? Are we even close to this level of wickedness? Like, we're given a few examples, but still relatively not a ton about why Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities were to be punished like this. Like, are we not this wicked? And and then if we are still having this wickedness, why isn't God doing this now?
Yeah, there's so much. There's no way in 10 minutes we're gonna lock that down. And I don't mean that as a dismissal. I mean, literally don't have the time to even have a good conversation. I don't know that we'd come to a unified agreement. We're talking about moral choices and ethical. How do we ethically respond to things? At what point, Ryan? I'll in Friendship Disagree, there I would refer to Dietrich Bonhoeffer's response to Nazism, where he was seems to have been involved in plots to kill Hitler. And at what point, a general question, not asking for answers right now, but at what point do we see evil so so atrocious and so deeply ingrained that physical response is required? At what point? I'll challenge the no violence idea, the 100% no violence idea, with you walk into a room and find a child being abused. There is hands are getting like, I mean,
Yeah.
stuff's going to happen. And no regrets other than I wasn't there early enough. And I don't mean that
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
bravado or anything. I'm saying safety
Yeah.
of somebody, of somebody at the end
Mhm.
of horror, the end of terror. Um, sorry. Sort of, I think it
Yeah.
should cause us to emote. Um, is what is going on in this town, what is going on in our
Mhm.
country, in our world, and things like that. At what point does God say maybe there's no flood, but he goes, okay, this thing's done? That's the heart of the or that's at least close to the core of the conversation about when does Christ return. And he says when it's, you'll notice when it's like the days of Noah, but we don't believe in the days of Noah. So it's hard to really. So throughout history, over the last 2,000 years, people have been claiming it's the days of Noah. It's the days of Noah. Everything's, going crazy. I don't know.
Mhm.
If that's been going on for 2,000 years, I think we're continuing to accomplish more and more. And I don't mean that. I mean that more of joking. That we're accomplishing quite a bit of evil. I
Mhm.
don't think I think it's a fallacy to think that God has changed. Um, Scripture is pretty clear that He
Mhm.
doesn't, and nor is He a man like us that He would lie or that He would be open to mood changes or
Mhm.
well, I was angry about that today, but I'm less angry than I am now. Than right now. This isn't
Yeah.
God. There's a There's a an ongoing we think our concepts are just so limited. Um, if there's a good, then he is essentially that, and everything that we call good is good insofar as it reflects him.
Mm.
And our moral quandaries and struggles are creations of our own, that we have created evil so profound that now we're confused about when it's
Mhm.
evil. We've created and endorsed evil that is so deep that we're
Yeah.
confused about good, um, and that we actually have to use evil to combat evil.
Mhm.
And so the nonviolence, when does Jesus flip tables? And is he, and so a question could come up about, well, Jesus is showing anger and he's being, Jesus is wrong. I mean, is some of the implications, and you're like,
Mm.
you're misunderstanding the
Yeah.
entire thing of what's going on there. Do you think, excuse me, that let's say a corporation decides they're going to buy up all the houses, and we see movies about this where they start running people out and trying to gentrify a neighborhood, so they run people out and go, that's unjust, that needs to be stopped. And we have whole movies about that where the Rock can show up and
Mhm.
save the day. And we feel good about that because what we call justice is being done. And I'm not disagreeing. I think it's a mini version, but it's also a version that shows our justification and acceptance
Mhm.
that there is wrong that does happen, and that it needs a response, and that someone strong has to respond. Um, and I have opinions about what America could be, but I also see the dangers in becoming the
Yeah.
world's police force, and the danger in deciding that we're the moral
Mhm.
judges. But
Mhm.
and it's all though created by the fact that evil is so profound that our very reference point for good is from a place of evil.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um,
So sorry, just
oh,
to
oh,
be clear, I do think there's a difference between um, being violent and
mhm.
stopping something
Yeah,
Mhm.
from right. Like
yes, yes, yes,
I think I walk in on somebody abusing my son, I'm gonna stop it, whether
yeah,
that means throwing a punch or putting it in some kind of hold or that kind
yeah.
of thing. Like to
Sure.
me,
Have you
that's
seen
not
the Cain Velasquez stories?
no.
A
Mm-mm.
MMA fighter.
Uh,
Yeah, look it up. You'd be like, dude's in jail, but
yeah.
good.
So
Meaning
right.
that if I'm going to jail, that's what it's for. Yeah.
So to me, that's not violent. Stopping abuse that I see happening, like however I need to. But once it goes to me, me enacting my own justice, then that's what I'm talking about. That's where it
Yes,
goes to
yes, yes.
evil, right? And so like it's not up for me to decide
Yeah.
whether this person lives or dies. Do I think somebody who abuses children should die? Yes, I do. But that's not up to me to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
It's up to me to make sure I stop it if I see it, and I totally would. So that's I guess the point I was making.
Yeah.
In
No, I'm with
less
you.
words,
I'm
but
with you.
yeah.
In general, the violence is never beneficial. Not beneficial. Never ideal. Amounts of evil, I think, can create necessity, or situational. If you're in the army, I'm telling you, there's a chance you may have to do violence. There's a great Andrew
that's where I would.
Garfield movie about choosing not to, but.
And if you're in the army, I would say that's where it is on you now to enact that justice, right? Like, and so like that,
and we're also trained. We were trained. I
Yeah.
don't know if they are now. We're trained that there's limits,
right?
And so
Right.
we're way off. I'm going to push us back just for time.
Yes.
So I want this conversation. I want to keep going. We're a little, which is also fine. Anyway, whatever. It's morally wrong that we're stopping. And anyway, man, guys, the complexity of ethics and morality, of good reading and things like that. So we're the Odd Testament podcast. We're going to express opinions and things, but I also wanted to push us to maybe ideas on how to read this. And so there was a, sorry, dry throat. A quote I found, I'm sorry for lack of reference for this one. I found it years ago and apparently didn't think citation was important, making fun of my past self. But the quote was, read the whole story as something to be applied, a story to be remembered, but a metaphor to be applied. And I don't disagree, but here was my response and idea to that was, I think a story, all stories, but including this one, can be used as a metaphor, but only after the story is understood, so that the metaphor can be applied well.
Yeah.
Not every person that you disagree with is an example of Sodom. And, but the metaphor is applied throughout the Bible many times, I think 47 times. So it's not insane. They're using it to the amount that it is a correct, or you're trying to say this is insane and nuts. So that's why it's not used too much. Not everything is Sodom, but there are things that you go, yeah, you're in the danger zone. To be suddenly the artist who sang that song disappeared out of my head. I could see his picture in my head.
Yeah,
exactly.
Top Gun.
Highway. Yeah. It's not gonna come. Anyway, so how can canvas be used as a metaphor? Certainly. What my question is because among the questions you go, what sin happened that God destroyed them? And I go, there is a conversation about that. But does it do any good? Is the purpose of this to say, don't do this sin?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be that. So overall, I would, in my opinion, I think, and this is a very broad kind of application, but this is a story of that reflects, I think, correctly for me anyway, the Genesis 6 destruction of everything. It's in that train of so bad that it can't keep existing. It's, I'm not going to allow this thing to continue to happen. Now, does that point of view create future questions? Absolutely. But we're just talking about this story and what happens here. So, examples of the worst, and to more clarify that, example of utterly broken, completely and totally broken. So this then jump forward to the book of Judges, and you actually see this playing out. And we're using, when we see this, I'll just read 19:22 from Judges. While they were enjoying themselves, a crowd of troublemakers from the town surrounded the house and began beating at the door, shouting to the old man, "Bring out the man who is staying with you so that we can have sex with him." Now, in this case, this is Israel, or people of, I want to say the tribe of Benjamin, doing an atrocious thing. The basic idea of judges begins at a certain point, and then the moral trajectory, and that's, I don't even like the word moral, but the state of existence trajectory in judges starts at a place and then drops through just the floor. It goes from everybody's kind of okay, Joshua, let's figure out the promised land, to Sodom and Gomorrah in one book, and we're supposed to get that. This is how insane Israel. They became like this. And so, and what's nuts is then the rest of Israel responds in an equally insane way. And so it wasn't just one tribe's nuts. No, they're all insane. Everything's wrong. Everything is utterly broken. And so this is the deal we're getting. So, and the Bible also, like Ryan talked about, and we've mentioned the connection to the fall of the angels, and the flood of Noah. And what then we see is less of a punishment then and more of a decreation. We see the entire valley wiped out, including the vegetation. We see it return to utter chaos. Because the so-called order is so wrong, we're going to destroy everything because the order needs to be restarted or completely wiped out. So, and it's meant to allow for more than a course correction. This isn't, here, let me move you this way. He's not correcting their math. The math is so wrong, you need to tear up the checkbook and start completely over. Okay? You guys don't know what checkbooks are, but anyway.
Really quick, would you mind?
Yep.
Would you mind if I interjected a thought?
Yep.
So the idea, because there's an idea out there, and it's like I think a widely accepted one amongst Christian circles, that homosexuality is the reason God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, that thing, and it could be, but I don't think so. I don't think to limit it to one sin, I think is really small-minded. Well, maybe small-minded is not the way to say it, but like I think us to understand this story, I think we need to read it. We need to understand it the way like a Jew would, the way God's people would, and there's actually scripture in the New Testament that talks about this, and in 2 Peter chapter 2, it says this in verse 7 and verse 8. But God also rescued Lot out of Sodom because he was a righteous man who was sick of the shameful immorality of the wicked people around him. Yes, Lot was a righteous man who was tormented in his soul by the wickedness he saw and heard day after day. So wickedness, right? Just the wickedness of the human heart is what God didn't like. And we saw that in Genesis 6. We see that in Genesis 19. We looked at it just now in Judges 19. I think it's interesting also to note too, this Genesis 19 account is just the wickedness of humanity. And then in Judges, it zooms in up the wickedness of Israel, the wickedness of God's people, which is even more infuriating. The first time I ever read Judges as a full narrative, like I was pissed because I was like, you guys are supposed to represent God and you're doing this crap. Like I was mad, which I think is that's the point of Judges.
Yeah, absolutely. Among the points. Yeah. So, so if we're looking at the sin, and we'll hit on a few more things, is John Boswell, a Yale historian, broke it down into 4 possible reasons, and maybe there's more, but for him there are 4 of why for the destruction, and again, possible reasons. First one was the people in Sodom tried to rape angels. A second possibility is the men of Sodom tried to engage in homosexual intercourse with the angels. The third was inhospitality of the visitors sent from the Lord, which is like I think I mentioned last week, a Greek story, and there's a few other stories of inhospitability Yeah, you got me. And then number 4, general wickedness, which had prompted the Lord to send the angels in the city in the first place. So I'll finish. Have me come back to why I think, or what I think is going on here. But the way the Bible uses it, to finish this up, is so example of utterly broken, and that's how it's used a number of times when prophets are referencing it. It'll be like Sodom. Things are so broken, it's going to be destroyed because of this. And it's also, they're being used as an example of how God will respond to utter wickedness. So don't mess around, because this is Sodom also is, I think, well understood as so wicked that the only way to respond to it, you couldn't bring in military to, oh, we're going to correct this and things like that. Again, not a course correction. So wicked that God himself had to destroy it utterly. And that's the only fix, is to stop this. So another way that Sodom and Gomorrah is used is Jesus actually references it, and also used as a type of rejection of Jesus. So there's in this, I think, a hospitality rejection. So if you see the angels as a type, I'm not saying they were Christ incarnate. I'm saying think of the angels as a type of Jesus showing up, and how culture responds to them, whether or not it welcomes the way it should, or not just rejects, goes out of its way. So then we have the story of Jesus where he shows up, and instead of being welcomed, he's not just said, no, we're good, keep your Jesus stuff. No, they're like, oh, let's kill you. And let's do it in the worst way possible. And let's use political deception and everything else in our toolbox to be able to do this. We're going to do everything we can to utterly destroy you. And Jesus actually tells us parable. I'm not going to read, but Matthew 21, parable of a landowner in a vineyard, where he sends his servants, and but instead he leaves for a trip and has servants taking care of his vineyard, and he sends his other servants to make sure the vineyard's okay, and they kill his servants. And so he's like, oh, I'm going to send my son. Surely they'll respect my son. And they kill him anyway. And so the response is, so what's going to happen to those people? Well, the landlord's going to show up and to utterly destroy them. And this should give us Sodom feels, vibes. And so also our the death of Jesus gives us this, what is going on here? We're actually deserving. We should be uncreated.
Wow.
And we get the depth of mercy when he goes, yeah, you should. But I'm actually going to be uncreated, or not. I don't want to overdo that, but conceptually, please. May not be a bad theological idea, but where we're at. And then the final way and there's probably some more detailed ones, but you mentioned Second Peter, but then also Jude, as I talked about, false prophets. In the New Testament, they're talking about false prophets, and they're saying, look, here's how bad they can be, is you're actually going to start believing that anything is okay. And we definitely have seen that. And Bonhoeffer actually pushed against this, and he called it cheap grace, where, and I'm oversimplifying Bonhoeffer's points, but with cheap grace, but the idea that, look, as long as you believe in God, then anything's okay. And these false prophets that these two are saying, it's like, look, you're believing stuff that just isn't true. And look, you need to pay attention to the consequences of not pursuing right behavior, right action, right thoughts, and things like that. So, and I know I'm talking a bunch, but I really want to, I don't want to leave the podcast without kind of bringing it to some kind of point. But I also prefer conversation. But anyway, so the point, I think the point question, a really good one, is instead of what sin, I'm not saying don't ask. I'm saying do that. I'll mention what I think is going on in a second, but what does this say about God is a really important thing. And I think it's saying that God is righteous, and
Mhm.
there's a point at which wickedness does rise to the point that he goes, okay, this is enough. And the what the story says is that the cries of of outrage at Sodom had gotten so much that they were heard in heaven, whatever that means. I'm not trying to over clarify that because I don't have any idea. That they show up, and Abram's able to say, but remember righteousness, remember innocence, and things like that. And God's like, yeah, no, okay, I agree. And you're Abram, you're getting what I'm laying down. That's what I'm looking for. And I'll do everything I can to not, but there may not be a way out of this.
Mhm.
Because this thing needs to stop. It needs to end. And so, so what does it say about God? There's something in there. I would think that way, whatever, and work on the conclusion. If your immediate is God's evil, I think you might be misreading the story. But you know, so but you know, but I think it should make you uncomfortable. I don't think
Yeah.
God's thrilled about this.
Right.
You know, you're probably on track if you're agreeing with Abraham, going, oh, but if you just walked into an entire brothel of utter evil going on, the response should be stop this utterly, burn the
Mhm.
whole stupid house down,
Mm.
get the children out, and burn the whole stupid thing down. Everyone inside. Um, you know,
Yeah.
so anyway,
Yeah.
so what we have going on as far as sin, rape, uh, a certain type of rape, of sexual immorality, but also inhospitality, and a deep-seated attitude of pride, violence, and a rejection of wisdom,
Mm.
of how things should work. A complete rejection of hospitality, which is a deeply set in the area. But that doesn't overwhelm for me the fact that they're going to rape these men that they think. And even if they thought they were angels, good gosh, they're doing that. It's so bad. I don't have words. And so the judgment of these cities then is to serve as a lesson to Abraham and to all the others that I think wickedness gets punished, but I don't think it's just a punishment. I think this is a wickedness will stop, period. And so
Good.
it's a warning in the sense that we should look around and go, what city am I sitting at the gate of?
Yeah.
And am I endorsing these things as if it's okay? Or am I seeing myself as I think Peter frames him, and Jude frame him as Lot, who isn't okay with these, but maybe you're missionaries in a place and ready, not accepting the culture, but uh, interested in the redemption of the individuals within it, but understanding that the culture can't be redeemed, but
Mm.
people can.
Mhm. Wow.
So to move away from the deserving of decreation and moving toward the hope of recreation, which is this gospel that has been put in front of us. So, is this homosexuality? Is this inhospitability? Man, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that word. I know, but is it because of rape? Is it because of? Look, these are examples to readers that say how bad this was.
Yeah. Yeah.
To zero in and say this is why gays are wrong, you're misreading the whole story.
Yep.
And I'm not making any statement at this moment about that other issue.
Right.
I'm saying that among the back then, one of the uses of not to be crass, but anal sex was to change gender of somebody. It was to remove identity. It was to demean them to the degree that they could no longer be who they were.
Dehumanize them. Or,
Dehumanize. Yeah,
dehumanize.
absolutely.
Dehumanize them.
Absolutely. This was to make them less than human. Absolutely. And so to get caught up in our ideas about this misses the effect that is going on here. It's worse than you think it is. So if you think, oh, homosexual acts are bad, this is way worse than that. They're using that as a tool to accomplish something else. This is utterly and deeply wrong. So it's not just rape. It's not just homosexual rape. It's not just inhospitality. It's a utter, absolute throwing away of any standard, and they're going to push again. They're going to attack the standard on purpose. And so why then was it destroyed? Because utter wickedness is so deep that it's unfixable. And alternatively, we see Jonah show up to Nineveh, who should have been giving you Sodom vibes, and they go, oh, we're wrong. Well, we don't just stop. We're going to repent. And God's grace shows up. And we see the same type of grace show up when in the conversation with Abraham. I'm done. There we go.
Hey, I wanted to, we're going to wrap it up here, but for those who are looking, you hear this and you want to be mobilized, you want to do something in order to help against great wickedness and evil in this world. There are many organizations like this, but there's an organization called A21, started by Christine Kane and Nick Kane. Christine's an evangelist, goes around and does a lot of conferences, but is an anti-human trafficking done through awareness, protection, freeing. They have done a lot of really great work, especially in Southeastern Europe and a lot of stuff, but even in America. And so if you're looking for that, donations to them is they're doing some awesome stuff, and you can see they're really good at showing their reports, showing their impact on the things that they're doing. They help fund missions where they send essentially mercenaries into known areas to free mass groups of people who are being trafficked, abused, a lot of them adults and children. So fund that. If you're looking for something to mobilize, you could do that locally, and you could do that globally. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. All right, people, if you're enjoying the Odd Testament podcast, we would love your support. The best way to support us is by showing us some love. And here's how you can do that. First, take a moment to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review us 5 stars. We would love your support. It gets the pod out to more and more people. Next, don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, whatever the correct terminology is. Hit the notification bell so you stay up to date on all our newest content. And finally, follow us on social media. We would love to have you join the conversation and interact with us that way. So your support means the world to us, and together we can keep bringing this awesome content to the world. So we love you guys. Thanks for joining us today. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.